Welcome back to the Lanterne Rouge Cycling Podcast presented by Zwift. I've made it to the coast. Improvise, adapt, overcome. We're on dodgy hotel Wi-Fi, but nothing will stop us. Trofeo Alfredo Binda recap, one of the oldest races on the Women's World Tour calendar, and quite a nice parcours too in Italy, in the Lakes region. And we have a circuit, 140 k's long, and a pairing of a shorter climb, the Casale, and the Orino climb. So the Casale is an 800-meter punch at 7%, and then that goes into the Orino climb, which is longer but shallower, 2.6 k's at 5%, with the last little bit quite steep. The last k is 6.2%. It's longer climbs before, and from the last, they do of that circuit, 4 repetitions of that.
Maths.
And then from the last one, pardon?
Perfect maths.
Exactly. I can count, not in any other language though. And it's 8 k's from the top of the last climb to the finish in Chitilio. So Benji, Balsamo here, Riolini here, but no Van Dijker. We have Wiebes here as the quickest pure sprinter. I'll still take her over Balsamo in a sprint any day.
Yeah.
And there was early action, really early action, which you often don't see in a race like this.
Exactly. There was action before the broadcast started, so we're going off like what the tickers were saying to us at that point in the day. Obviously, you said it. The Trek team is different than last year, And does that mean they have to go for a different strategy than last year, for example? Because if you recall correctly, last year was such a great Trek masterpiece where we're talking about, they've got Balsamo, and we saw Longoborghini following attacks, but sitting on the last climb, making sure that Balsamo could come back together with Van Dijk and so forth. Reason that she's not here is because she's pregnant at the moment. But a different team, a more climby-focused team next to Balsamo. No Van Dijk as a consequence. No Longoborghini, because she has cold, or I'm not sure if it was COVID or cold.
She was sick, wasn't she?
Yeah, I recall so as well. She was pretty unhappy that she couldn't be here today, so that's unfortunate for Trek, but would it have an influence on the race? Well, early attacks with Trek included. With 100k to go on this early climb before we get to the final circuits of those 4 climbs that you just mentioned. Maschiago Primo is that climb, basically. There's a split in the peloton, and there must have been a serious tempo on that climb then, because there were only 15 riders left at that point in the race, according to the tickers. And then we get like a breakaway action, 4 actual proper climbers going into a move towards the top of this climb, which is the rider we've been speaking about quite a few times on this podcast. Carialini was second, unfortunately, on the UAE Tour climbing stage, but has won, if I recall correctly, a smaller Italian classic, also being gifted
big
by,
watts too.
Was it Spratt that day?
Sprat, yeah.
So
it was like a 1-1 or something. Yeah. They went crazy on the second last climb, like really big numbers, and put 2 minutes into the rest of the field. Yeah.
Amazing performance, and we've seen amazing performance from her again at this QM point, because she was basically gone with Kim Katzel from Jumbo, also been climbing well at Valenciana earlier this season. Anna Shackley been doing pretty well for SD Works as well. And then Paulina Royakkers for Canyon Schramm. But Gaia Realini was the one taking the Queen of the Mountains points there on that climb. And that's something you don't often see, eh? Queen of the Mountains jersey in like one-day races. We have it at Men's San Sebastian, if I recall correctly.
And Cadell's.
Really?
I'm pretty sure Taco won it at Cadell's. From the break?
Must not be a very prominent climb then.
Hey, listen, that climb's pretty steep in parts. I only remember that because the commentator, I think it was Liggett, said it. And I was like, hold up, this is a thing? So I think, in some races they have it. Maybe Lombardia does, but no, it's something you never think about. It's obviously like Italian rider, Italian team, Italian race. If it's there to go for it, why not go for it? There's probably a little bit of cash involved as well.
Yeah,
but
probably.
Riolini's just been an unreal addition. A really, really nice addition for Trek. Segafredo had to do it.
Terrible joke.
Like, because Sprat's wants to win her own races. Now, I know they gave Riolini the win the other day, but I think a young rider like that, it's a lot easier to say to them, 100 Ks to
Yeah.
go, just blow up the race, even if she is the same level as Spratt, whereas Spratt's like, okay, we're going to take you to finish, etc. I think the way she's riding and the freedom she's had has just been and it puts all the other teams under pressure, Benji.
Exactly. Because Wiebes is trying to survive every bloody climb in this race. She climbed well in the likes of Omloop and so forth, but can she do it in multiple consecutive climbs like in this race? We'd see when the race continues. But eventually everything came back together in the descent of that climb. But regardless of that, Realini went on to take every QM point from that point onwards, basically, except the last few climbs in the race. So I'm pretty certain that she took the QM points in this race. I haven't actually checked full certain, but just pretend she took it. If she doesn't, then she didn't. But anyway, race continues. We've got a crash in the peloton. Katzau, the rider we just mentioned in there. Dronova as well for Israel, I recall correctly.
Israel.
Yeah. And a few other riders involved. But we continue. We go towards roughly 51k to go, and that's where a move actually starts happening. And this is an intriguing move because it's weird. You get an attack with a group with Marianne Vos, Elise Shabby, so that's Canyon SRAM, Miska Bredewold, which is SD Works, Amal Yusik, which is Canyon SRAM still, right? Or did she move team? I recall Canyon SRAM still most likely.
Amal Yusik still Canyon
Okay.
SRAM. Oh no, Amal Yusik's UAE.
Oh yeah, she did move. My head said something about moving. Van Androoy was in there, and Peperkamp. She was great for DSM on Jebel Hafid as well. And Nivea Doma in this group.
She was good, yeah.
And I was curious because I felt like I wasn't expecting Nivea Doma to ride in this group, for example. Because even though they're with two, so maybe that's the change, eh? If Marianne Vos is in that group, do you think Nivea Doma should be scared to ride? It's technically better to
I don't think so.
beat them in a small group than it is to beat Vos with teammates, right?
I think if you can... Trek's the big danger, right? Balsamo's the big danger. She won last year, so you have to create a race situation where you're not coming to a reduced group finish with Balsamo. So, I mean, Vos, she is the GOAT, of course, but it is her first race day of the year, and it's 50 Ks to go. She's isolated. You can try work her over. Also, maybe Nivea Doma outpunches her. Like, Vos doesn't outpunch Nivea Doma on the punchy climbs all the time. In fact, the opposite. Sometimes Nivea Doma puts her under pressure, and then it's the flat finish where Vos kills her in the sprint. So, no problem with that at all. It's Trek Segafredo where it's like, this is not the best race situation they could hope for. With Realini behind, I think, and
Balsamo behind.
Balsamo not there.
Spratt behind.
Your odds are not great.
Exactly. Now, fine for them because that group actually came together with the peloton again a bit later, only 4 kilometers later, and we're going into the last 3 of these Orino circuits now, and we're going on to the third last of this Orino climb, the bigger of the ones in the circuit, and we see that UAE and Canyon is pacing in the group. There's roughly 30 riders left. Lorena Wiebes is still in the peloton. In the middle of it, Balsamo still in the peloton, Vos is in the peloton, Lebecki is the one dropping. So, I don't know with Lebecki. Is it wrong to say that I wasn't really expecting anything in the first place based on the last year and a half?
I'd always, from past results, expected a climb as well as Wiebes, at a minimum.
Yeah. Okay.
But Wiebes' climbing has improved, I think, and she has also said, I'm more than just a sprinter. I want to be known as a classics rider. Those sort of races. So, I don't know, but you're right. Like Lebecki, she could be off, but it's like, it's hard to. I mean, was she doing work for Vos? Was she not the designated leader? I feel like a lot of these teams have sometimes been a little bit less than I expected, including FDJ, but then, or even Jayco Alula with Rosamund Gannon and Manley.
Yeah.
Like, the course suits them fine, but is this race important to them? It should be, to be honest. But they also, a lot of those riders peaked, like Grace Brown, like those Jayco riders I just mentioned for the Australian races, which actually have big coverage and are important for those riders. So my answer, Benji, is I don't really know. Like Vos could win. You'd be like, oh, of course. But she also could not win. And you're like, oh, what's the first race? Whatever.
Exactly. That's true. Now, we didn't really see a proper attack on that climb from like a favorite, but like the outsider types were attacking just by the top. Guazzini crashed somewhere in the peloton, but the attacks came from the likes of Chabocco, which is a rider on DSM. We also had Carlijn Swinkels, which is, I feel like she's a pretty good versatile sprinty type in some races last year, and she's probably getting the early attack here instead of like the versatile sprinty type because Marianne Vos is still their designated leader for this race. Anyway, Swinkels bridges to Chabocco, and we see Adigis doing exactly the same a bit later. Winner of Cat 11's Great Ocean Road Race, making that exact move while she still has Grace Brown and Cavalli in the group behind. That's what happens on that climb. We start pushing a bit forward. Those three riders stay ahead for quite a bit longer until we get to the next Torino climb. And that's where the proper action kicks off and where Trek Segafredo really puts up a serious lead out. Realini hits the front at the bottom of the climb, and Swinkels, Adigis, and Chabocco are caught. So the order is Realini and then Van Anrooy. No Spratt directly in the wheel of Van Anrooy, so I was kind of thinking...
She was kind of there, but not looking good.
Okay. What do you think their plan was at that point? Because like I wasn't sure what they were going to do from there.
Well, Realini goes to the front, right? Breaks there. Everyone's going to look at them to manage that move because Jumbo are represented, FDJ are represented, two strong teams. They've got the big favorite Balsamo, which I pronounce incorrectly every time. But anyway, I can't get the stress right. I know people tell me I can't get the stress right on Balsamo's name. Balsamo starts slipping. She was third wheel. She starts slipping on the Realini pace. The gap is melting. And we have another Orino after this. And Van Anrooy could pace the descent after Realini's done the climb. So they got two riders to pair to maintain this, and they're melting the gap to the point where Balsamo's slipping, which is a smart thing. She wasn't dropping, just moving back a bit. And I was like, well, and also Van Anrooy, visibly to me, looked a little bit under pressure. And she counters right at the top and seems to take everyone by surprise. And it's also sort of from, like, there weren't too many riders right on her wheel looking at her. She motions at the motorbike to get out of her way, but actually, like, the motorbike's your best friend. So
wow.
You don't want it to go too far out of the way.
It was a sketchy motorbike.
They blocked her later. They were all over it. Yeah, they were all over the road later. But at this point, when she attacked on the crest, and people were chasing. And also, she slid in front of the breakaway, and then the brake was kind of in front, maybe blocking a bit. But over the top of this climb, the gap is 2 seconds, 3 seconds max. But we saw yesterday that's plenty in cycling.
Yeah, that's the moment that she basically makes that move. It's like you would expect a rider like that to make the move on the climb itself, but it felt like it was more an attack that was like near the top of the climb, just before the top of the climb. To the point that the gap that she made was so insignificant that you're like, they're probably going to catch that. It's not a big gap. But they were all looking at each other. Because the teams that are the ones that were in the breakaway that are now caught, who do they have left? If you look at Carlijn Swinkels' team, Lebecki and Vos. Lebecki was off the back already. So Vos won't start pacing in that group. If you look at FDJ, Cavalli's there. Brown is there. A bike just fell in the background here. But that's an F.
This is live podcasting. We don't do any retakes. What do you mean, bike? Let's just pause there. I also go to the Zwift read, so that's a good segue. But is that off the trainer? What's going on there?
It's not on the trainer yet. I'm supposed to ride after this podcast this time. It's been a sketchy day.
All right.
But
sketchy day for you. I had to drive on the Spanish highways in pouring rain. There was a police escort also. Fun story time. There's a police escort. I'm talking 8 motorbikes with just a white van and just a dude driving the van, like in plain clothes. And there was then a police car ahead, and they took the whole left lane going 10 k's below the speed limit. And I don't really know the rules on that one. I don't even know the rules on that one in Australia. Like, no way I was undercutting them on the other lane doing the speed limit. So I just sat there, and then all the other drivers saw me being hesitant to overtake. So then we just sit behind this convoy from like Vic to the coast. And I don't know what's in the van. They then stopped at a service station. And they weren't like I don't think it was a prison van. Remco Evenepoel. Yeah. Police convoy to... I did see the quick step car. I think they were texting. They were nearly catching my lane. on the way. But anyway, women's cycling. Zwift is one of the biggest supporters of women's cycling. They put their money where their mouth is. The Tour de France Femme avec Zwift off the ground last year, a multi-year commitment. You'll see it again this year. And then you also have Paris-Roubaix Femme avec Zwift this year, which is terrifyingly in under a month.
Jesus.
Yeah, the end of the classics season. Unbelievable. So thanks to Zwift for supporting not just the show, but women's cycling and the Tour de France Femme avec Zwift. If you want to check out the route, which is different to the route last year, you can go check out our reaction podcast to that. And also follow Benji's journey on Zwift. Follow him. You get a sneak peek into what's to come. He's been doing a million races, but I won't spoil it too much. But hopefully the bike's not broken, so he can actually continue with that and finish that video. Anyway, back to Trofeo Alfredo Binda. The reason Van Anrooij's attack worked with a gap that also was like 3 seconds, I timed it 3 seconds, and went to 5 seconds, then it came down to like 3 again. And usually when the gap starts coming down, someone will just bridge to it. The pace of Riolini has redlined all the domestiques. It's sort of put the leaders in an uncomfortable level too. And one of the most active attackers to bring her back is Mavi Garcia, but she can't descend either. Yeah. So that's another problem. And you got Balsamo looking at you. So it's perfect tactics by Trek, Benji, because
tactics
with just Spratt, who's small, with just Riolini, who's small as well, but good on the climbs, and just Van Anrooij, with no longer Borghini, Nolan Van Dijk, who they had last year, the bigger powerhouses, this might have been more difficult for them to control in a conventional manner for a sprint for Balsamo.
Exactly, and the question then is, even with Balsamo there, if Van Anrooij gets caught at this point, directly in the descent, she can probably try again on the next climb, but if she then fails, then they've got Spratt to try again, and if that fails, they've still got Balsamo for the sprint. So they've got so many like backup options in this race, as long as Balsamo can hold on to the tempo of the group, that it looks really good for them at this point when this gap exists. And the gap starts expanding a tiny bit from 3 seconds to 5 seconds in the descent. 5 seconds to 7, 8 seconds. But she's obviously a decent descender from her technique from cyclocross. And you got to keep in mind, the people in the second group are also, like DSM, for example. Are they just going to close the gap? No, why would they close the gap? Because if they do, then they're going to lose the race to someone else. So instead of doing that, they decided to roll attacks on the group. And when you start rolling attacks on the group, this is in the flat pod after that climb where she attacked on, then the gap is like 15 seconds. That attack is going to go for a tiny bit. That won't go necessarily anywhere. They get closed down. And we see quite a few moves like that. Labou is one of the attackers that does that. Nivea Doma is one of the attackers that follows Labou. Mavi Garcia tries to follow. And when those three riders are following, then the rest of the group is also following it. So you've got that consecutive event of some people trying to attack, some people closing, some people trying to attack, some people closing. And it doesn't really work out until there's a moment somewhere where Shabby makes a move. Shabby attacks. The gap is 15 seconds at this point, roughly, with Van Anrooij at the front. And the group kind of sits up for a second. But then again, UAE takes over, closes Shabby, tempo dies again. So it's like everybody rather wants to attack and close down solo than they want to pace, for the obvious reason that they're just bringing Spratt and Balsamo back into the front of the race if they just pace. But is that part of Group 2 syndrome, you'd say? Because that doesn't get you closer most of the time, huh?
I think I can't remember, I was going to make like a racing principles point about it, not in this race, but a previous race where a rider, it might have been Strada, where there was a rider clear. And if you have a domestique in the group, as long as they can at least close the gap or hold it stable, even slowly, use them as much as possible. Because when you attack as a leader, and you better be sure you can bridge the gap. Because if you can't bridge the gap, like Mavi Garcia couldn't a few times, that acceleration, because people are going to follow you, will drop your domestique. And so then when you do look at your domestique, like, I just attack, can you now pace? They're extra tired. You may as well get them to say, go on the front, pull absolutely full gas for 3 minutes to the point where you just drop. And then I'll attack on the next climb and go all in on that. And sometimes I think Van Aert's done it in the past. Strada Bianca is a good example this year in the men's edition where one of Volta and Benoit kind of needed to do that. In hindsight, it's also the threat of Balsamo. It just makes everyone nervous. Like, you don't want to bring someone that quick because it's not like, she might win. No, she will win the sprint. Like, she'll win the sprint by 4 bike lengths if you bring her there. Wiebes has dropped as well. And that's basically how the race played out, Benji. Van Anrooy, from being tired, from what I could see visibly on that climb second last Torino, and it's still a Trek Masterclass.
Yep.
They've done it a different way this year.
Exactly. And like on the last Torino, a lot of stuff can happen, like Canyon pacing at the start and Mavi Garcia attacking, then Requiera trying to pace for a tiny bit. But every single time after an attack, the tempo dies again. And that's when the gap starts expanding even more to 30 seconds on the climb. It just isn't enough. I will say, however, strong performance by Bauernfeind once again, Ricarda on Canyon SRAM. We spoke about her a few times last year where she was really talented in the younger division of cycling here, and she made the step up and is already competing at the top level. Same for Requiera, Justine Requiera, really competitive right now. She won Valenciana earlier this season, GC of it, so strong performance there on the final day. Cavalli, I would rate her performance good. I'm happy that she's back competing, but it's clear that she's not on the level yet that she was before, because otherwise she'd be doing the attacks instead of Mavi Garcia, right?
Yeah. Like, I saw her pacing on the front for a bit, but I don't think she's at her, like, Mont Ventoux challenge winning shape, which is understandable. I thought she was taking a longer break from cycling. Didn't they announce she was taking a break from cycling?
I thought so as well, but hey, I hope.
I mean, she's back. Good
it's
for her.
Good. I hope it's solved.
But it didn't seem very long. Like, I swear that announcement was only a few weeks ago, and then she's back. But FDJ have been good this season with Argeest and Grace Brown in Australia at least, so they've got some runs on the board. Anyway, Van Anrooy wins by 23 seconds out of her teammate Balsamo, who wins the sprint behind doing handstands. Goscini third. Alenis Sierra. Yeah. Always consistent for Movistar, picking up a lot of points too. There's big points on offer in this race. Trek in the top. Let me do some quick maths. Trek picked up 700 over 750 points in this race, UCI points. So, and relegation, I think this is the last year of relegation in the women's calendar, which is not the same cycle as the men's 3-year cycle. Hopefully, anyway. Sierra 4th, Paladin 5th, Persico 6th, Uhen 7th, Ayen, Hekiri. These are hard for Hekiera, Steels. One. Then I say the British woman's name like Tom's fucking Steels, like a quick step. Steels. I just had to do 2 Dutch names. And Mavi Garcia, there we go. Yara Castelline, I know that one. See, she came 11th. That was tricky. Anyway, Trek Masterclass Benji, even without Van Dijken, even without Longa Borghini, they get it done. We have a lot of women's World Tour one-day races coming up. We have Brugge de Panne on Wednesday. We have Gent-Wevelgem next weekend. Then we have Ronde van Vlaanderen. Then we have Paris-Roubaix. Then there's a couple of weeks till Amstel Gold's race. It's classics season. How you like Trek for them?
I don't know. It's very difficult, because if you look at the way SD Works has been riding recently and the way that Trek has been riding recently, when it comes to Trek today, it's a very similar tactic in the way that SD Works rode Omloop het Nieuwsblad, or how they rode Nokere Koersen, for example. If we take a look at last year's edition of this race, Alfredo Binda for a second, that strategy there was kind of the opposite of what they did today. Last year, they had Longa Borghini sit on attacks in hopes that the sprinter came back. Now, they attacked and forced other teams to bring their sprinter back. So it's like a slight switch in the strategy. And we see the same factor being played out in Omloop when it comes to SD Works and in Nokere Koersen when it comes to SD Works. Because in those two races, they did exactly the same with Kopecky and Wiebes, where Kopecky attacked early at both races, and Wiebes was the leftover sprinter in the peloton that destroyed it. That's 3 1-2s in the span of 3 weeks of women's cycling? No, more. Strade was also a 1-2. But anyway, it's noticeable that those teams are like doing similar strategies right now. Whether that will turn into things at the classics, I don't know, because I feel like Kopecky's just a level above the rest when it comes to the classics at the moment. Yeah, and Wiebes is moving up too. So
Riolini, love Riolini, but she's not going to be that helpful chasing the break and Brugge de Panne. No, I mean, imagine she fucking launches the Moor. She probably could. I mean, she did well in the crosswinds. She did like 5.5 watts per kilo or something for 5 minutes or 10 minutes before her feet, and then did the performance on her feet because she was struggling in the crosswinds. And I think Ida Marino got dropped because she's also really small. She got dropped in the crosswind, came back. Anyway, I think it's all SD work still because Van den Roy should be fine in the classics, but missing Van Dijk, we don't know about Longo Borghini. They're the big engines who can really, like, when Longo Borghini goes, obviously she's won. I mean, they've won Paris-Roubaix 2 years in a row, Trek Segafredo. So Longo Borghini won last year, right?
What race?
Paris-Roubaix.
Yes, she did. Correct. I was like,
when she goes, you got to take it seriously. And they mixed up Gen Wevelgem the year before in 2021. I don't know. They'll still be strong, of course, but SD Works to me, like Wiebes for Gen Wevelgem, as Benji said, or Brugge de Panne, even Tour of Flanders, frankly, in a Group 3 behind with Kopecky ahead, or Group 2 with Kopecky ahead, really dangerous. The only way I see SD Works not getting it done is obviously crash mechanicals, but is where Strade Bianche goes. The aftermath of that all comes to a head, and there's some team tactics issues. But as between Wiebes and Kopecky, they seem to work in a very complementary fashion. So we'll see. But Trek have won the races they've gone to in their home country and some of the punchier ones. But for the big classics, I still think SD Works are the big,
especially
big
at the moment.
Yeah. Maybe someone else will surprise. I'd love to see. I'm not doing the bit. What was the cyclocross that did well in Strade, Benji?
What? Sorry?
The cyclocross rider that came sixth in. Yeah. Is she doing any of the classics? I wanted her to be doing the classics, but I seem to remember an interview with her saying she was eschewing the classics.
Eschewing it? Oof, that's violent. No races on program.
Eschewing.
Oh, eschewing. That's a different thing, eh? That's the opposite of shewing.
Is it ESCHEWING?
I don't know. I don't have my Duolingo open, but I would like to see her do those races, depending on the fact that she was strong at Strade Bianche. Now,
yeah,
I don't know. I don't know if we'll see her. I'll have to deep dive into the internet to find out. But outside of her, there's...
And we also need an update on the Hungarian rider on SD Works.
Oh, okay. Blanka Vash.
Vash.
She wasn't that great in the CX season, I feel like. So, I don't know what's happening. It didn't seem to work out yet at the start of the season in CX. So, I feel like in road racing, maybe that's a thing where she's focusing more on the road now at the moment, and she wants to be good at a level, but she's coming to Amstel, I think, first race. So I guess we'll find out. I have absolutely no clue. I'm a bit unfortunate. Is Van Empel riding which is like I'm gonna tell you, Patrick. So Van Empel is kind of like the nemesis of Puk Pieterse in the CX, for example. And I can't find her on the internet because internet is broken. So I'm gonna guess that she is riding Brabantse Pijl and Flèche Wallonne.
Ardennes.
So Ardennes instead of cobble races.
She could do cobbles.
Yeah.
Especially the way Tour of Flanders is ridden, she could do cobbles. I actually did watch those two battle.
Ooh.
It's one of the only CX. Yeah.
I still didn't remember the name.
Pat myself on the back too much. I'm struggling. I'm in struggle street today.
To be fair, you've been in a car for a year.
On principle. Who's the CX guy that
Wout van Aert.
he?
That's on Jumbo-Visma.
No. He's like always fourth. He's like small.
Elizabeth.
That's the one. Is he ever good on the road?
No.
Oh. Anyway, if someone could explain the economics of CX riding to me, why he wouldn't try to do a milieu conversion, let me know. I think definitely in the women's, there's some of the economics in play where those two, Fem Van Empel and Puck Peters, all jokes aside, like, unfortunately, although it's improving, there's still a lot more money in the CX women's side of things relative to the number of race days, costs, logistics, everything. Maybe I'm wrong on that, and I don't understand the economics of it, but I'd love to see more of them in the classics. Like, I'd really love to see Peters in the classics, and maybe we will. She's super young. There's lots of time, but the more talent, the better.
Did you save another horse today?
No, I didn't. There's what happened today. Not much, to be honest. I'll have to come up with another anecdote. Just the van thing. That's all I've got. The police escort van.
Okay.
I'll have to look it up.
We'll get over it. Don't worry.
That's all from us. Trofeo Alfredo Binda recap. Hope you enjoyed it. Track Masterclass once again. And we'll see you with Catalonia Stage 2 on Tuesday. Till then, ciao.